You're very welcome. Thank you for joining me. Much appreciated. Against my Patreon friends, my little gang of Patreon people. God bless you. And hopefully the next few months, we're only starting putting stuff on Patreon that's not going to be anywhere else. So fancy jumping on for £5 a month. Much appreciated. Now, I'm going to be doing differently for the next couple of weeks because in a couple of weeks' time, I am traveling to the USA. Good old America. Yes, I'm going to the USA. But it's telling. I'm making this up. My wife said to me when she booked the thing that it's not up for debate or discussion. I've been told that I have to delete my comedy Facebook account from my mobile and just have my personal account because she's afraid that I'm going to be stuck in Guantanamo Bay. That's the state we've got into, people. You're traveling to the land of the free and the brave, and you have to delete stuff you may criticize. I know I definitely did criticize Trump. There's stuff in that there I'd put myself in jail for. But anyway, she has put the foot down, and I have to get it off. And I don't really think she's that worried about me going to Guantanamo. No, I think it's more she's worried about her being stuck in there beside me. So that's the state of the things in America. But I'll be talking about that there. So the next couple of weeks will be different, sort of. It won't be just the usual stuff, but I'll be back to usual whenever I get back. If I get back. If I get back. This week, to start it off, I want to tell you a story. Right? Are you all sitting comfortably? Then we shall begin. Here, that reminds me. Do you remember Romper Room? I loved Romper Room. Only people from here will understand this, but that's who this is for. Do you remember Romper Room? I loved Romper Room. Oh, and as a kid, I so wanted to be in Romper Room. I was dying to get on the Romper Room, right? And your woman and the story and through the and all the stuff. I would have loved to go on the Romper Room. I never got on the Romper Room. It's one of the tragedies in my life, I have to say. I should be in therapy. Anyway, of course, being this place, that was the 60s. In the 70s, Romper Rooms took on a whole different idea. No, you did not want to be in the Romper Rooms of the 70s. No. They weren't nice places at all. But here, this is what I want to talk about. Early 80s, I'm visiting London to see my younger brother. He, at that time, was working in a hotel in Golders Green. Right? So, one of the days we got up and we thought, we're going to the city centre. Going to the city centre, as two paddies would. They're going to see a sights. So we'll go down to the local underground station and jump on a train. And that was, I don't know, it was about 11 o'clock, so it was after rush hour. Wasn't that busy. Maybe it was about 20 people in the carriage. And as we got on, we sat down. I noticed there was a very well-dressed lady sitting opposite me. Okay. With reading a book, as everybody did in them days, it was before mobile phones or whatever. And she had one foot tucked under her leg. You know, as some people do. Right? I didn't notice her. That was it. I'm sitting talking to the brother. And then I became aware that she was now talking to a guy up a couple of seats up from us on our side of the train. Now, I presumed, being a thick paddy, that they knew each other. I think, you know what it's like here. Everybody knows everybody. And I just presumed there were two people talking to each other. But then I suddenly realised that the conversation had become, the volume had been turned up. Shall we put it that way? I realised this was no longer a conversation. And next thing, I realised your man was shouting at this woman to get her feet off the seat. Now she rightly pointed out that her foot wasn't on the seat. And in a heartbeat, your man jumps up and made a move. He started walking toward going for your woman. In an instant, my brother and I rose as one. Now, this is way back when we were in our 20s, and we'd spent our childhood lifting very large weights. So we were two very big paddies. And we roared at your man. He was made very, very, very clear. Sit down. So he sat down. Wise decision on his part. He sat down, and we sat on either side of him. And we informed him that he was getting off the train on the same station as we were. He said that it wasn't his stop. We said that it wasn't I. So when it came to our stop, we stood up. He did try to struggle, which I found very funny, very, very funny, because me and the brother just put hands under armpits and just detached him from gravity and moved him towards the doors. But you see, from going from the seat towards the door, I looked down the carriage and I became incensed. There was at least 10 or 12 other men sitting in that carriage, and not one of them had moved. They'd actually pulled their newspapers in front of their faces, someone. They still weren't looking at us with your man. I was incensed. I couldn't help myself. I screamed at them. You're all a bunch of cowardly bastards, I says to them. I pointed at the wee woman. I says, that could be your mother or your sister or your daughter. You gutless. I was very annoyed. I have to say I was very annoyed. Now, my brother pointed out to me, explained to me afterwards that in London, you know what I mean? It's almost like a survival technique. People just don't get involved. But we got your man out onto the station, and we did not, now, give us credit now, we did not rough him up. We did not lay hands on him. But we did scare the shite out of him. Yes, I did. We did, without doubt. I think we did psychologically impress upon him why he should never treat a woman like that again. And I'm making a very, very strong guess that guy never accosted a woman like that ever again in his life. Because in the back of his head after that, okay, he would always have in the back of his head that there could be two mad paddies sitting somewhere down the train. And he mightn't get off as easily the next time. Oh, I don't know. Now, why this story? This came to mind during the week because I read an article that reminded me again of something else. Because last year seemingly marked the 50th anniversary of the horrific killing in New York of Kitty Genovese. Now, I came across her story way back in the day when I was doing a psychology course. I did many, many courses. I started many, many courses. I finished none. That was just, I've learned over the last couple of years why that was. But I was always interested in stuff and I was always studying stuff. Now, her tragic case became a criminal cause célèbre after it was reported in the New York Times that dozens of her neighbours had heard her being attacked, but had done nothing. Right? They hadn't phoned the police. They'd done nothing. Her attack happened in March 1964. Now, Kitty was I think it's a bartender, a bar manager, and she was traveling home to Queens in New York. Parked her car, but this character, her attacker, had been watching her, and he got out, ran over, stabbed her twice in the back. He then ran away. Kitty, God love her. Listen, there was a lot of screaming going on here. Obviously. Kitty was still screaming. She stumbled round the back of her building to try to get into the back. She couldn't get into the back. Your man came back and stabbed her again to death and raped her. All this in an area where hundreds of people were listening to what was happening. Okay? And that's what made this a cause célèbre. Now, it was 2 weeks after the attack, the New York Times published an article claiming that 37 witnesses saw or heard the attack and that none of them had intervened or called the police. Now, in subsequent years, investigations, they revealed that the extent of public apathy had been exaggerated, with the New York Times finally admitting that the reporting had been somewhat sloppy. But still, some neighbours had heard her cries and had done nothing. Now, there's no excuse, but an explanation. Most of them said that they thought it was the domestic, or that somebody else would obviously have called the police. Kitty's death prompted inquiries into what later became known as the bystander effect, or the Genovese syndrome. With her, again, murder becoming a staple of psychology textbooks where I first came across it. And basically, it's just dealing with this thing of people don't get involved. People just don't get involved. Her attacker was a 29-year-old guy called Molesley or something, Winston Molesley. He later got caught for burglary. He confessed to her murder, was sentenced to death, commuted to life imprisonment, and he rightly spent the next 52 years in prison until he died at 81. It's a complicated one, this. This is a complicated one. To get involved or not get involved. I worked in bars for a long time, and I can't tell you the number of times I have seen a boy, a fella, a man and woman, say, getting into a row. The doorman comes over to break it up. He breaks it up, right? Is trying to calm the guy down. And the woman he's come to her aid of then buries a stiletto heel or an ashtray or whatever in his head. That does not justify not stepping up. I still don't think that justifies it. Like, I hope I never reach an age where I sit reading a newspaper rather than intervene. Because I say it's complicated, and I know what it's like on the other side. because 20 years after the train event, I was in a cafe in Belfast. I having a wee coffee, finished my coffee, and was getting up to leave, and I noticed there was a young fella sitting over at a table by himself, ostensibly reading a book. But what had caught my eye was this kid had tears running down his face. Do you understand? He was crying. And it stumped me. I swear to God, it absolutely stumped me. I was completely conflicted. I didn't know what to do. Like part of me obviously wanted to go over and ask, are you okay? But there was another part of me didn't want to draw attention to his distress and maybe embarrass him. So on that occasion, I decided on discretion, just left the cafe. Now that was 2 decades ago. And still sometimes today, I wonder what happened to that wee fella. So, for me at least, it's better to ask and risk being told to sort off and mind my own business than ignore and live with regret. So you got to weigh it up. You just got to weigh it up yourself. But I'm glad I still live in a society where a woman who was about to be attacked wouldn't be surrounded by 20 men reading newspapers. I can guarantee you that would not happen. Well, not where I am from anyway. No. No. A good example of where people stepping up for the common good would be a really wonderful thing. Would be if those people, anybody knows the identities of the toe rag arsonists who have started fires both in the Mourne Mountains and the Sperrins. Well, if they stood up and passed those names on to the police. Like the fire in the Mournes is one of the worst in many years and has tied up hundreds of firefighters who are working day and night to extinguish it. And this is nightmare stuff. Look at this. This is nightmare stuff. Firefighters are having to walk from 30 minutes to an hour just to get to the site of the blazes whilst carrying all that heavy gear. And once they're there, there's no water. So they then have to physically try and beat out the flames. Now, as most of the areas affected are bogs, they have some of the most delicate coverage of heathers, and the environmental damage done will have impact for decades. Like the immediate casualties are the wee animals who may still be in hibernation and will no doubt have died in the flames. But it's terrific stuff. Again, the bird life on the hills will also be hit hard, as they'll have lost nesting sites and the insects they feed on. In short, the selfish, idiotic actions of a few morons will have blighted some of our most scenic areas for years. We need those responsible caught, brought before the courts, and substantial penalties imposed. For as climate change continues, it's going to get hotter because of global warming, and the danger of naturally occurring wildfires will become a yearly event. And while so far, thank God, there's been no loss of human life, God forbid one of those firefighters perish on the way up those hills carrying all that gear. Do these bastards not think of that? Do they think of nobody but themselves? Well, the Donald's tariffs are hitting home. His main target seemed to have been China. He really is going for China. But rather than bowing down, the Chinese have went, come on, you bitch. Come on, you bitchy. We'll show you why. That's not the accent. No. So they've said, bring it on. Bring it on. They will hit back. And one of the major misconceptions, which of course has been peddled by Trump every day, he talks about how unfairly America's been treated by the rest of the world. And he's trying to put across this idea that the US is simply reacting to trade barriers other countries have imposed on them. Bullshit! You'll be stunned to find this is a lie, barefaced lie. And I found a wonderful explanation from a guy in Bloomberg. I'm going to let him explain this because he did it much, much better than me.
You've probably seen this equation quite a lot in the last few hours. It's got, by my count, 5 separate Greek letters in it, and it's what the US Trade Representative's office says it used to calculate reciprocal tariffs on the rest of the world. It looks very impressive because it's in Greek. Ultimately, I would suggest this is nonsense. They are going to divide the amount that a country exported to the US by the amount that the US exported back to them. So, for example, if you sell 70% more stuff to the US than the US sells to you, that comes to 70%, according to those Greek letters. That then becomes this number here in this also very famous chart now, which is described here as the average tariff charged to the US. That's not actually what it is. It's not a measure of trade barriers, it's a measure of the trade gap between two countries, caused by whatever means. Now, to give you an idea of how ridiculous this is, let's take Bangladesh, which apparently has a 74% tariff on the US. What that actually means is that Bangladesh is a very poor country that can't afford to buy much stuff from the US, but that is very dependent on exports, which it's able to have some success in because its people are paid very little money. It's a measure of the imbalance in the trade relationship, not a measure of the trade barriers that Bangladesh is putting up. The reciprocal tariff against them is reciprocating against an imbalance of trade which is natural between poor and rich countries, not reciprocating against a trade barrier. There is a definition of reciprocal tariffs which doesn't need Greek letters, which is very simply, you tariff us, we'll tariff you the same back. If you have a 10% tariff on our light trucks, we'll have a 10% tariff on yours. That's not what this is. This is, returning to this, frankly, Greek, if not double Dutch.
Now, if there's any idea or concept behind Trump's tariffs, it is that the dollar will come down. He wants the dollar to basically collapse, which will mean that manufacturing in the US will be much, much cheaper, and he believes that industries will then relocate back to America. The question is, who in America is willing to accept a salary of $1 a day to sit in a sweatshop for 10 hours making cheap clothes? AI has already. Here it is. In truth, the dollar probably will crash, but there will be no commensurate move by manufacturers back to the US. As the capital outlay and investing in factories in these other countries, be it Vietnam, be it India, be it China, is massive. And these companies know that in 3 years, Trump will be gone. Right? Trump's gone, and his tariffs will probably be a faint but bad memory. So what we're facing here, people, is we're going to be paying an awful lot more for the basics. And as always, this will hit the most financially disadvantaged and the poorest, who tragically are the demographic who voted in greater numbers than any other for the Donald. Indeed, for the last couple of weeks, the world has wondered at the tariff antics of Trump, with some putting his behaviour down simply as proof of his profound ignorance of world economics. Now, the outworkings of his tariff threats has seen trillions wiped off the international markets, with the US also hit down trillions. I mean, what other explanation could there be for his last minute about face this week, with his cancelling of the tariffs for 90 days and reducing the amount to only 10%, except of course for China? Well, we now may have evidence of a mendacious side to his madness, with the leak of a comment he made in the Oval Office after he'd announced his stalling of tariffs.
This is Charles Schwab. It's not just a company, it's actually an individual. And he made $2.5 billion today, and he made $900 million. That's not bad, because he's in financials. I've always been following.
He made $2.5 billion today, and he made $900 million. Must be nice being friends with the Donald. But here's the bigger question, people. If he's willing to leak to his billionaire mates when he's pulling the economic levers. How much has Trump made on the side? Kerching.
You'll do nothing. You hear me? You'll do nothing.